Explosions tore through Moscow's skyline last night, lighting up the capital of Russia in flames that could be seen for miles. Emergency sirens wailed across the city as fireballs erupted near the heart of the capital. Witnesses described the night sky as a scene out of a war movie, as Ukrainian drones pierced Russian air defenses and struck deep inside what was once considered the most secure city in the country. Panic spread across neighborhoods as debris rained down on streets, cars burned uncontrollably, and terrified residents rushed to underground shelters. For the first time since the start of the war, the heart of Russia, its mighty capital, looked vulnerable, exposed, and under siege. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Please subscribe and like my videos. This is one of the most dramatic and unsettling nights in modern Russian history. Just after midnight, Moscow's skies erupted with thunderous booms as at least 20 drones, reportedly launched from Ukrainian-controlled territory, penetrated the Russian capital's airspace. Air defense systems scrambled to intercept them, but several slipped through, crashing into residential and commercial areas. Firefighters battled massive blazes as emergency teams evacuated civilians from burning buildings. The Kremlin immediately went into crisis mode, calling an emergency meeting of top security officials as video footage began flooding social media, showing skyscrapers engulfed in smoke, shattered glass covering the streets, and terrified Muscovites filming from apartment balconies as explosions echoed across the skyline. According to early reports, the attack targeted both symbolic and strategic sites. One of the main impacts occurred near the Moscow City Financial District, an area already hit in previous drone strikes. Flames erupted from the side of a glass tower that houses major Russian corporations and government-linked offices. Another drone reportedly struck near a military administrative facility on the outskirts of the city, while several others were intercepted before reaching their targets. Russian state media downplayed the scale of the damage, claiming most drones were shot down, but eyewitness videos tell a different story of chaos, panic, and a government struggling to maintain control of its narrative. The symbolism of this attack cannot be overstated. For over 2 years, Moscow had maintained a sense of detachment from the war it launched against Ukraine. Life in the capital continued largely undisturbed, with propaganda assuring citizens that the special military operation was distant, safe, and under control. But tonight, that illusion shattered. The war has come home. The strikes on Moscow mark a psychological turning point for ordinary Russians who, for the first time, are feeling the fear and insecurity Ukrainians have lived with daily since 2022. Analysts believe the operation was meticulously planned. Ukrainian intelligence agencies have been expanding their long-range strike capabilities for months, testing Russia's air defenses with precision drone operations. These attacks are not random, they are part of Kyiv's strategy to push the war onto Russian soil, to make the aggressor feel the cost of invasion. By hitting Moscow, Ukraine sends a bold message: no city in Russia is untouchable. Military experts suggest that these drones may have been launched from within Russian territory itself, possibly by sabotage groups or anti-Kremlin partisans. If true, it would expose a frightening level of vulnerability inside Putin's own borders. President Vladimir Putin, according to reports, was informed within minutes of the explosions. The Kremlin released a short, carefully worded statement condemning the attack as an act of terrorism and promising swift retaliation. However, Putin's expression during a televised appearance the following morning betrayed visible frustration. His message was defiant but hollow: our air defenses are working effectively, the enemy will be punished. Behind the scenes, sources say Moscow's elite were in panic mode, fearing not just for their safety but for the image of control the Kremlin has fought to maintain. State television quickly moved to contain the narrative. News anchors repeated the official line that no serious damage occurred, while quietly avoiding footage of burning buildings that had already gone viral on Telegram and Western media, but it was impossible to hide the scale of what happened. In neighborhoods like Prisnensky and Komovniki, residents were forced to evacuate as smoke filled the air. Traffic froze across key routes as emergency vehicles raced through the streets. For hours, the Russian capital resembled a city at war. For Ukrainians, this operation represented both tactical and moral victory. Kyiv has long argued that Russia's war can only end when Russians themselves feel its consequences. The drone strike on Moscow achieved precisely that. Social media channels in Ukraine flooded with posts celebrating the operation, though official military spokespeople maintained a strategic silence, neither confirming nor denying direct involvement. Instead, they repeated a familiar line: "The war is coming back to where it started." Behind this operation lies a powerful evolution in Ukraine's war strategy. When the conflict began, Ukraine relied heavily on Western-supplied weapons for defense. Over time, faced with restrictions on striking Russian territory, Ukrainian engineers and military experts began developing homegrown drones capable of long-range precision strikes. These drones are small, fast, and difficult to detect. They can fly hundreds of kilometers, evade radar, and deliver explosive payloads with pinpoint accuracy. The result is a low-cost, high-impact weapon that's reshaping modern warfare. Moscow's air defense network, long touted as one of the most advanced in the world, is now being tested like never before. The capital is ringed with S-400 missile systems, electronic warfare units, and radar detection grids. Yet, despite this, Ukrainian drones continue to slip through, hitting sensitive targets in the heart of Russia's power. Each successful strike exposes weaknesses, shakes public confidence, and challenges the myth of Russian invulnerability. Inside Russia, the political fallout is growing. As footage of the explosions spread online, even pro-Kremlin bloggers expressed rare criticism of the government's preparedness. Some demanded resignations among defense officials, accusing them of failing to protect the capital. Others warned that these strikes would embolden Ukraine and further erode Russia's international standing. On the streets, ordinary citizens are beginning to whisper the unthinkable, that the war may no longer be winnable. In contrast, the Kremlin has doubled down on its messaging. Russian officials claim that Ukraine is acting under Western direction, accusing NATO of orchestrating the attack. They insist that these drone operations are part of a larger Western plan to destabilize Russia internally. But this narrative, while familiar, seems to be losing its power. Even among loyal Russians, frustration is growing. The question many are asking now is simple: if Moscow itself is not safe, what has all this sacrifice been for? Beyond the political symbolism, the attack has significant military implications. Ukrainian strikes deep inside Russia disrupt logistics, stretch defense resources, and force Moscow to divert valuable assets away from the front lines. Every missile battery, radar system, or interceptor placed around Moscow is one less available on the battlefield in Ukraine. This shift creates new vulnerabilities along the front, giving Ukrainian forces opportunities to advance. It's a strategic form of pressure, psychological and operational, that Kyiv has learned to use effectively. The economic impact is also profound. The Moscow City financial district, already hit in previous strikes, houses major banks, tech companies, and government offices. Each new attack undermines investor confidence and further isolates Russia's economy. Insurance rates for properties in central Moscow have reportedly skyrocketed, and foreign business presence continues to dwindle. The Kremlin's attempts to portray stability are increasingly at odds with the reality on the ground, a country at war, under fire, and facing isolation from the global economy. But beyond politics and economics lies something deeper: fear. For decades, the Russian capital symbolized control, order, and power. Now, for ordinary Muscovites, the sound of sirens brings dread. Parents rush their children to basements at night. Social media groups share tips on identifying incoming drones or finding the nearest shelters. The war that once seemed distant is now personal, visible, and terrifyingly real. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, the public mood is defiant. Every explosion in Moscow is seen as justice for the destruction of Ukrainian cities like Mariupol, Kharkiv, and Odessa. To them, these strikes are not aggression but retribution, a warning that the days of Russian impunity are ending. Yet, Ukrainian officials are careful to balance triumph with restraint. Their message to the world remains consistent. They are defending their nation, not waging war against civilians. Internationally, the response to the attack has been mixed. Western governments, while publicly cautious, have reiterated Ukraine's right to self-defense. Privately, however, some diplomats worry that escalating strikes on Moscow could provoke unpredictable Russian retaliation. NATO intelligence reports suggest increased Russian missile activity near the Black Sea and Kaliningrad regions, raising fears of counterattacks. The global community watches closely, aware that every drone that hits Moscow brings the war closer to a dangerous tipping point. Inside Ukraine, the mood among the military is one of growing confidence. Each successful strike demonstrates the effectiveness of their evolving strategy and the ingenuity of their engineers. These are not random acts of aggression. They are calculated moves designed to force Russia into a defensive posture. For a country fighting for its survival, bringing the war to Moscow is as much about symbolism as it is about strategy. Still, questions remain about how far Ukraine is willing to go. Analysts predict that as Ukrainian technology improves, deeper and more frequent strikes could follow, potentially targeting military command centers or energy infrastructure within Russia. Such actions would carry immense risk, but could also shift the balance of power dramatically. Moscow, once thought to be unreachable, is now a battlefield of nerves where each explosion carries both tactical impact and psychological shock. As dawn broke over Moscow the morning after the strike, smoke still lingered over parts of the city. Streets were cordoned off, and investigators in hazmat suits examined debris. The official death toll remains unclear, with authorities providing minimal information. But satellite imagery later revealed scorched rooftops and blackened facades across multiple blocks. The message was unmistakable: Moscow is no longer safe. In a chilling twist, residents have started reporting drone sounds at night even when no attack occurs, a sign of deepening anxiety and trauma. The capital that once prided itself on strength now lives in anticipation of the next strike. And in Ukraine, that's exactly the psychological advantage military planners sought to create. The war has entered a new phase, one where fear itself becomes a weapon. For the global audience, this moment marks a turning point in the narrative of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. What began as a conventional invasion has transformed into a technological, psychological, and strategic confrontation with no clear boundaries. Drones, not tanks, now define the future of warfare. A small, silent machine flying low through the night can do what thousands of soldiers cannot: bring the war to the enemy's doorstep. In the coming days, Russia will likely respond, perhaps with intensified missile strikes on Ukrainian cities or new attempts to cripple Ukraine's infrastructure. But each act of retaliation risks further international isolation. Putin's challenge now is not only to restore control, but to convince his people that control still exists. The image of a burning Moscow will haunt him politically and historically. For Ukraine, the success of this operation reinforces its resilience and technological progress. It shows the world that even a nation under siege can strike back with innovation and courage. Yet, behind the celebration lies the somber reality of ongoing war, one that continues to take lives on both sides. As both nations brace for the next move, one truth has become clear: the era of distant wars is over. In modern conflict, no capital is untouchable. And as the world watches the smoke rise over Moscow, one question echoes across every capital, from Washington to Berlin, from Kyiv to Beijing: how much closer are we to the edge? The drone strike on Moscow has not just changed the course of this war, it has redefined the boundaries of modern warfare itself.